Welcome to CISOs Insiders Podcast. In this podcast, I'll be interviewing leading CISOs in the industry for a light conversation about anything from their favorite drinks to favorite vendor to key influencers' biggest accomplishments and failures, myths they like to debunk, advice they want to give out, and even some tips they can extend to the eager vendor who's knocking on their door. Join us for a light talk. I encourage you to walk away with at least one insight that will help you better yourself or your business. So hi, good morning, and thank you, Ian, for joining me today. So I think we've known each other for 20 years now, and yeah, give or take, and for sure you're one of the more interesting people I've met in the information security domain. You're a true information security veteran, even before it was called cybersecurity. 20 odd years ago, you were the top expert in, I think, Unix and Linux systems, and you were working as a consultant for a while. And I think throughout the years, you honed your skills as a manager and as an industry leader. I know you're a keynote speaker in a bunch of conferences and conventions. I know you held a couple of, or you currently hold a couple of positions with some market leaders. And you occupied the role of director of information of security research back in the day with a few security vendors. Under your belt, I believe there are some names such as IO Active and Amazon, where you served in a leadership capacity. And I also remember that you're an active board member with a bunch of startup companies and some market organizations such as B-Sides, Forbes, and recently I think SVCI.
Correct, as an investor.
Yeah. And I know that you currently reside in Israel after a short stint in the US. I believe you were living in New York for 10 years?
Yep, I've been, the last stint was 5 years in New York City, yes.
Okay. And right now, I believe you occupy the seat of the CISO of Cimpress Group, and I'm sure there are many more details that I forgot here. So if you just want to give your perspective here, that would be a great time.
Sure. So as you kind of noted, I'm typically summarizing it as I'm by trade a hacker and by training a hacker, and most of my career was spent, as you mentioned, consulting and pen testing and red teaming. I consider myself a constant noob, and I love learning new things, and I think that also paints my career path along the years in changing roles and picking up new challenges. And as you mentioned, I've run through the rigor of consulting and kind of hands-on work with a lot of different customers worldwide, through working inside the industry as a vendor, as a provider of products and services, and more recently, more towards the client side with a couple of years at Amazon in information security and AWS, and more recently in the past 2.5 years as the chief security officer for Cimpress. So kind of a long transition, picking up skills along the way, picking up new areas of interest, sort of missing some of the hands-on. It's still I still get my fingers kind of tickling once in a while when I see some new vulnerabilities and playing around with new technologies. But most of my work these days is comprised of running, kind of strategic risk and security for multi-billion-dollar organizations at Cimpress.
Yeah, and Cimpress, it's actually a group of companies, right? So you have Vistaprint under your brand and a few other well-known brands.
Yeah, we've got 15 different brands or 15 different businesses under the Cimpress umbrella. The biggest and most notable one, especially here in the US, is obviously Vistaprint. Here in the US, we also have National Pen, based out of San Diego. We have Build Design, based out of Austin, Texas. And outside the US, we've got a few more businesses ranging from PixArt through Vermaak and Vrock, Easy Flyer, Exa Group, Cimpress China. We've got operations in pretty much all over the world. But overall, yes, we're about 15 businesses. And one of the biggest challenges there is that we're operating in a highly decentralized manner. So each business kind of runs by itself and is free to make its own decisions, especially around technology, which makes my job super interesting or super challenging, if you'd like.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think, again, that's pretty much the reason why I jumped into this, trying to tackle, security from a different perspective, making sure that security is truly an enabler for those businesses to keep being innovators in their own fields, in their own markets and geographies. And that's really a challenge that appealed to me as a practitioner.
Okay, thank you for the intro. And, I really liked what you told about yourself. I believe you used the term constant noob. And
Yep.
and that's very modest, obviously. And, having to know you just a bit, I'm pretty impressed. I think I will use that as like one of the headers in, when I publish this podcast. But
I don't know, I think you have to have that mentality in this industry. It's moving so fast, and I truly don't see, unless you're really focused on a specific technical area and you're really going in depth just for that, only then you can, I think, again, personal opinion, obviously,
yeah.
I probably am wrong, but only then you can kind of call yourself an expert in that field. Other than that, from a mentality perspective, I would rather keep myself in that constant noob category, keep my eyes out. I love learning new things. I love, kind of getting that slap in the face of, holy shit, I have no idea what this is. It kind of led me to my last position at Amazon. I was comfortably running application security at Amazon information security on the non-AWS side. And I saw an interesting position on the AWS side for running security for what's now is called the Nitro instances, which also included all of the hardware stack. And as an arrogant hacker, I was like, oh, hardware, yeah, of course, I used to do that. It's hardware hacking. You just plug into JTAG and pull the firmware and reverse it a little bit. And I got such a huge slap in the face when I understood that. I'm like, no, buddy, this is what you're talking about is high level. This is when we're talking hardware, we're talking chip design, we're talking silicone, we're talking building computers from the ground up. And I realized, I literally told them, this is amazing. This is so fascinating. This is so cool. I have no idea how to run security or how security applies to that. I want this job. And, it's an amazing opportunity to learn new things. So I guess I keep constantly running or looking for those challenges to kind of challenge myself and learn new things.
Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting state of mind. And I think it does. I don't think it's. I think the majority of the CISOs right now do not feel that way, and I do appreciate it.
Okay.
But yeah. So moving on. I believe that there are actually a couple of questions that I usually ask here to break the ice, so to speak. So marital status. I believe you're married plus four.
Four overall, yeah.
Four overall, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That I know of.
Yeah, well, let's keep it at that.
Yeah. Four that I'm paying for. It's
favorite drink. I know CISOs tend to like whiskey. I'm not sure what your favorite drink is.
I'm open. I've got a pretty wide variety, but yeah, I don't want to kind of stick to a particular brand. I like everything from a good glass of wine to a nice cocktail based typically on whiskey or bourbon. So I'll stick to a Manhattan. Let's keep it there.
Great.
Yeah.
So let's dive right in. I have a bunch of questions here that I want your take on. Let's start with the first one. So what's the one thing you wish you'd known when you began your career?
Oh, wow. It's not about technology. As weird as it sounds, information security or cybersecurity is not just about technology. Yes, technology plays a big part, and should and could be used as a stepping stone or as a way to drive change. But it's not just about technology. It would have saved me a lot of effort and probably years of fighting windmills as a technology purist when I was in my early days in security. And it's security is really mostly about the people. It's mostly about protecting people, what they care about, businesses, all of that, fluffy stuff that, again, if I do kind of a rewind 20, 25 years, I would look at that stuff and say, this is, MBA stuff, and, this people who don't understand the true nature of technology. So yeah, I wish I could go back to the Ian of 25 years ago and it's like, hey, it's not about technology, buddy.
Yeah, and actually I've heard this answer before from other CISOs as well. So I think, a lot of people that grew as, and that came from the technical side, whether it was IT or development or hacking, you're very focused in what you do. You keep your head down, but then when you look up, it's like, yeah, I think only then you realize,
all alone here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Moving on. So it's not about technology. It's mostly about the people. That was the key takeaway here.
Yep, absolutely.
What would you say was your biggest failure, and what did you learn from it?
It's a good question. I think that one of the things that it brings me back to my early consulting days, and again, it really ties up to that previous question. I was on a gig and on site with a client in France, of all places, implementing some crypto technology and building some code for them. As you pretty much described it, like head down, just doing my thing, implementing new crypto techniques and new crypto algorithms, at least new for that time, completely oblivious of what's going on, of the business context, of what's going on with the company that hired us to do this, 100% relying on kind of the back office, the project managers and all that, again, fluffy things to deal with, to kind of take this off of my shoulders to keep me focused on the technical work. Finished the job, got back to Tel Aviv, and I get a call from my manager, from the CTO of the company I was working for, telling me that the customer is highly dissatisfied with my work. And I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, this is a brand new crypto algorithm that's like the top of the line. Implemented it, tested it for them. They were happy. Everyone was like, high-fiving and congratulating me. And it's like, yeah, but they thought that you did this and you did that. Again, from a social perspective, I completely missed the boat in terms of making the right connections and kind of selling or catering for what the customer actually needed in terms of getting support from a security professional. And I was just kind of, head down doing my thing, producing code that worked and integrated, but missed the entire communication spectrum of making sure that the customer actually knows what's going on, knows what I'm doing, and doesn't feel like I'm just like in my little cubby all day doing my thing. They actually suspected or thought that I was hacking them or doing something nefarious. And for me, it was, again, kind of a huge revelation of, I can't, first of all, as a consultant, never just defer all the bureaucracy and kind of client management to someone else. It's your responsibility. And as a hacker, as a professional, as a security professional, you have to understand that you're operating within the context. So, that notion of the brilliant jerk that often gets a pass because they're so good at what they do, but they're socially just not, they can't work in a team and they're always assholes to everyone around them because they're so brilliant. doesn't really work. It's not worth it. It's more of a liability than a value. So that that was a huge failure on my end, and the dissonance between the quality, my perceived quality of deliverable that I provided and what the customer felt, for me was a huge failure. And again, one of that first times where I learned what it really means to be a consultant.
Yeah. But I think the fact that you remember it as such, and I mean, you did mention it was a slap in the face. So I'm betting that was one of the, possibly it was one of the triggers that led to a change, right?
For me, yes.
Yeah,
On a
yeah, of
personal
course,
basis,
for you.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, so you probably learned more from your biggest failure than
You
from some
typically learn,
accomplishment.
yeah, absolutely, 100%. To do something right, sometimes you need luck, sometimes it just happens. And the learning opportunity from that is almost zero, because you have almost nothing to debrief on. To do something wrong and to identify that quickly, to learn from it, much more valuable. So yeah, absolutely.
So touching on your biggest failure, can you share your biggest accomplishment?
I don't want to peg that into kind of a professional aspect of the career, if you will. I mean, if you're saying, look, Ian, you have to pick a professional accomplishment, I could probably think of something. But from a personal perspective, I think that my biggest accomplishment is starting the local DEF CON group in Tel Aviv, and having it still run after over 10 years now, I think. That would probably be it. It started when I was getting really frustrated by flying back and forth from Tel Aviv to Vegas every year, meeting a lot of people on the plane or in Vegas that live literally 10 minutes from me, and meeting them only that once a year. And missing out on catching up with them in Tel Aviv, where we actually live the rest of the year. And it drove me to start up, just start the DEF CON group in Tel Aviv and run it for a few good years. Get to a point where I'm able to delegate and kind of pass the baton off to someone else to keep running it, and still seeing it thrive and succeed and go on and have meetups every month with a couple of talks and socialization, and really having a community come together in Tel Aviv that was absolutely missing before that.
Yeah, and I think I remember the first time that that you've published that. Yeah, and definitely creating a community. I think it is a big accomplishment. So what advice would you give to someone who wants to pursue a career similar to yours?
Wow, don't do it. There's probably better ways to pursue a career similar to mine, or at least to get to the point where I got to. As you said before, I personally think that I learned more from mistakes, and I'm willing to take risks and and make the wrong decisions. I'm sure that there's a way to get to the point where I am at now in probably half the time that it took me. So my advice would be, don't do it. If you do want to do it and you're really passionate about it, I would say focus on the failures. Not from a kind of compulsive, obsessive way, but really from a learning opportunity. It's not the end of the world. No one died. No one got bankrupt, I hope, yet. So really, really focus on identifying those failures fast. And I'm quoting, obviously smarter people about failing fast and iterating quickly. But it really does work. And I love that state of mind of learning and failing and learning from it, and trying again and changing an attitude and kind of tweaking parameters. Really put yourself into it. If you're doing this for the money or the fame or whatever other aspect, just don't do it. It's not worth it. I feel lucky that I'm doing something that I'm truly passionate about, that I consider a hobby. You know, every day, sometimes I'm like, I'm getting paid to do this. This is amazing.
Yeah.
So it's really about sticking to what drives you and something that you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I think the key here is to fail small and fail fast. So try not to have like too big of a failure,
Yep.
but do learn from all your little failures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And okay, so remind me, in terms of your role right now that you occupy,
Mm-hmm.
are you under IT in any sense? Are you do you sit parallel to IT or to DevOps or to any, you know?
Not so I'm not really connected or dependent on IT. I personally see security and IT as conflicting interests to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be, I think that these two things should be in close partnership. But from a reporting perspective or from a responsibility perspective, I see most of my role as more of a business function than a technology function. And again, you know, under my responsibility is also physical security, not just information security. I'm highly involved with our enterprise risk management, the ERM group at Cimpress, kind of running risk for the entire group. Highly involved with legal and privacy and HR and finance. So you can't really, I at least in my perception, you cannot tie it purely to IT. And because of that conflict of interest, there is a problem with direct IT reporting in my mind.
Okay. Yeah, and that's definitely one of two major notions, I think. A lot of the CISOs that I've interviewed lately, though, they were a part of IT, and most of them told me the same. They told me that the ability to be, you know, very close to the resources, and although there is an inherent conflict of interest, most of them said that, you know, the fact that they report to, you know, either the CTO or the CIO, um, usually helps them run projects in a more efficient manner. Now, I do understand what you're saying and where you're coming from, and personally, I agree with that. But it's just, you know, I'm just curious because obviously you have a lot of successes, and those other seasons as well. They've had a lot of successes as well. So I'm just wondering, I mean, is it a cultural thing? Is it, will it, you know, does it look the way it does because, you know, specifically we're talking about Cimpress, or?
I don't think so. Again, I think that the successes are because of the fact that we managed to create good partnerships with the technology functions
Mhm.
rather than with reporting lines.
Okay.
For me personally, it also means that I've managed to create good partnerships with other functions other than technology. Again, finance is a great example. You know, I have an ongoing catch up with our CFO, and then, you know, for me, that's a part where I do a lot of my calibration in terms of risk tolerance and areas of focus and things that really matter to the business. Not to discount what we're doing from a technology perspective, but, you know, from a CFO perspective, they really see what makes the business tick, and for them, success and failure might have different implications than from for the technology functions. And I think that as a security executive, you have to have both views and to be able to not really mediate, but to combine both aspects and factor them into your job, and to make sure that you're successful in both aspects.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think it goes back to what you said at the beginning. That it's all about the people, right? So
Yeah.
obviously, if you didn't have soft skills and you weren't able to form relationships and partnerships, you weren't as successful as you might have been. Okay.
Yep.
What are the best resources that have helped you along the way? And I'm talking, you know, about anything from colleagues, partners, vendors, customers, yeah, basically anything.
Um, First of all, the internet. Um, you know, being able to access such a huge breadth of information, being forced to apply judgment and logic to what you're reading and what's available. You know, not everything on the internet is correct. I mean, I know it's shocking revelation. Even I can post something on the internet on my blog and, you know, make it look like it's right and it's completely wrong. So being forced, you know, first of all, having that breadth of all of the knowledge that humanity has almost, and being forced to apply judgment to it is probably the number one. Number two is, um, I don't want to name specific names, but having a good network of colleagues, friends, hackers from all around the world has been indispensable. Being able to tap into that communal knowledge, and it goes back to the community part that I mentioned before. You know, no one person can just take all of this. And whenever I run into a new area of interest, into something I know less about or know nothing about, I find it highly valuable to have this network and kind of be able to drop this topic into a Slack channel or an IRC or whatever it is, and go like, hey guys, does anyone know how to deal with X? You know, security in X, security in Y, and almost knowing for 100% that there's going to be someone that touched this, that's not just touched this, but it has actual hands-on experience in it and is probably considered one of the experts in that field, indispensable.
Mhm.
And so that's definitely the kind of the second resource that I'm still utilizing until this day.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah, I think it's interesting because on one hand, a lot of CISOs do not like to share, but on the other, I have seen a lot of, not a lot, but some networks and, you know, like networks of colleagues that came
Mm-hmm.
about to be in the past few years. So yeah, and definitely every CISO that I'm talking to basically tells me the same thing when I ask him, you know, any question about how they choose a vendor or how they decide on like a typical product or service. So I think the answer is almost always the same. I reach out to my network.
Yes, we talk a lot amongst ourselves. There's, you know, I see it as indispensable. You have to be able to vet things around, especially in these days. Again, every vendor these days can put out marketing and put out material that seem to make them the best solution for something. But unless you get firsthand experience from someone else who's tested it and had experience with it, doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I typically go to, again, either my network of colleagues, CISOs, professionals, whatever it is, or I defer it to my kind of technical advisors or people who report me. Is like, can you really look into this? You know, I've tapped out of my technical expertise to be able to vet this, if this is right or wrong. Can you take a look at this and tell me what you think?
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it runs these days, at least for me.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll touch more about this later. Can you name 3 people who have been the most influential to you?
Um, I would actually start with a couple of my professors back in university. I've been given an amazing opportunity when I was going through my college degree, to run a couple of research projects that were really outside of the curriculum and have them account for, you know, for academic credits.
That sounds typical to you.
It's, you know, I was, you know, I don't want to say I was getting bored, but I was trying to, you know, yeah, I was getting a little bored and I wanted some different challenges. And I had an amazing opportunity of having two great professors during my college years. The first one is Professor Shimon Shokin, who was
Oh,
the dean of the Interdisciplinary Center Computer Science class, and Professor Yuda Afek, which was also kind of the dean of my first year or second year class. With both, I've developed some great research projects, and they really taught me how to think critically, write. It's something that a lot of us are sometimes struggling
yeah.
to express ourselves and put something in writing that's cohesive and you can kind of learn from, and really give me the opportunity to expand and try new things and fail, and correct myself and iterate. One of those projects turned, kind of evolved eventually into a course that's still run in MIT these days.
Wow, that's impressive.
Building digital systems or something like that. I still have some credit in the book that Professor Schocken and Yuda wrote. So that's probably kind of the first person or persons that I would consider influential.
So what was the name of the project? Because I've taken a class with Professor Shokin as well, probably a few years after you graduated.
I think it's building digital systems or something of that sort. You basically build a computer from scratch.
So yeah, I've looked at that. I mean, I've taken a class, so I
Yeah.
actually passed that, and I remember that system where you put all the nodes and
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. You
okay,
start with a NAND gate and you
yeah,
end up building a
full
fully
computer.
functional computer.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
You
yeah.
write the operating system, you write the firmware, you write everything.
So that was actually this is like one of the only classes I actually remember, and it shocked me back then because that was the first time I actually realized how a computer worked.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and now I know to take it back to you. So yeah,
Well, it's Professor Shocking again. I
well,
was
yeah.
I was a
You were
lowly
just a side,
student that was
yeah,
just
just a sidekick.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. Um, yeah. So what is the one common myth about your profession that you want to debunk?
It's not as sexy as it looks.
Yeah.
No. I think that the most common myth is that everything is so dangerous, and Russia and China and we're being hacked left and right. It's not like that. It's really not like that. Yes, there's a lot of damage that can be done, that is being done, from data loss and fines that are being paid and lawsuits and companies being closed. Yes, it's all correct. Yes, there's a lot of attack surface to even individuals that operate online. But not everything is a big fancy cat or bad, cuddly bear or whatever it is. Russia, China, Iran, Korea backed thing. Most of what most people are dealing with, and that includes corporations and even big enterprises, is just stupid hacking. It's spray and pray attacks. It's unpatched systems and reused passwords that are being reused, and just oversights from a lot of architects and IT people that don't build things to last.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest misconception. All this fancy hacking and green screen and matrix style stuff doesn't really exist. It's the human factor in a lot of the cybersecurity elements and information security elements is huge. It's not just about technology, and we've been, as an industry, we have been exploiting the human function alongside the technical one. Mm-hmm. for decades now. But what gets the spotlight is kind of the stunt hacking, the fancy hacking, I can control your Tesla from the remote. It's like, yeah, in very specific conditions, if it's open to this and if it's open to that, and if you plug something into it, there's a lot of focus on technology and not really focus on the actual context.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, one of the biggest things that needs to be debunked.
And and I think it helps a lot of vendors to capitalize on scare tactics.
Yes.
Because then,
Yes.
it creates I'm not, I wouldn't say coherent marketing strategy, but it does, help create like a more standing out marketing strategy. But, going back to what you said earlier, you pretty much, I mean, if I'm interpreting you correctly, you pretty much tell the vendors, don't invest in a marketing strategy, invest in a product, and, just because I'm bypassing your marketing strategy as it is. I don't care about your brochures. I don't care about your videos or about your, flash videos or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just get me a good product and
Yes.
put some good like customer opinions on that and testimonials
Yep.
and convince my network. And this is a topic I would like to touch on like in one of the next questions here, because
Sure.
I think it will provide a lot of value.
Yeah, and I would actually enhance what you just said and kind of twist it around a little bit. Maybe not invest in the product, but invest in the solution.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay, it might be terminology, but a product is one thing, and a product can either solve a problem or address a very specific technical issue. And again, two different things. If something is a problem for me, I would like that solved. If there's a technical issue that does not manifest itself as a problem, I don't care about it. So you might solve that very technical issue, but no one cares about. And a lot of vendors come from a point of inventing a problem, all right? And then inventing a solution for that problem and making that the best solution to that problem that no one really has. And that's why I'm saying, focus on the solution. Focus on the solution that, and work within the industry. Talk to a lot of CISOs, talk to a lot of companies, understand what are the problems that they're facing. What solutions do they actually need? And based on that, try to figure out, can I address part of the problem, all of the problem, and come up with solutions to that. So again, I know I might sound a little nitpicky there, but really focus on the solutions rather than the products.
No, definitely. And I think that's one of your missions over at SVCI.
SVCI,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. We invest in companies where we think that we can help hone in on a problem and really enable those startups to come up with solutions that matter for the industry.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm wondering whether this answer that you just provided, or rather this insight, would affect my next question. And this question is, definitely interesting for me to ask you specifically, because you're in the consulting space for a
Yeah.
while. So if you could, and again, we've known each other for 20 years now, and I've founded this company, or rather a group of companies, about 11 years ago. And if you could step into my shoes right now, what would you do? What would you, I mean, what advice would you give me?
That's a good one. Definitely keep expanding on the network of resources that you have. Being able to have conversations like this, being able to have an open discussion with potential customers and just people in the industry on what problems they're facing, what are their pain points. To me, that was invaluable back in my consulting days. Being able to talk to my customers without the client vendor kind of facade being between us, being able to sit down over beers or drinks or dinner or lunch or whatever it is, coffee, and just having an open conversation and asking, like, what challenges you beyond the project that we're working on, beyond this specific, pen test or red team or whatever it is, what other things concern you? For me, that was a huge insight back in my consulting days. I'm sure that you're doing this better than I did in the past, because you're a successful CEO, of 11 years. Consulting in this industry does not come easy, as you probably know. But I would say absolutely continue on that path, continue expanding on it. One of the most interesting things that I did was getting to a point where I could become kind of a trusted advisor function to CISOs. Which to me seemed kind of backwards, because I think I got more from it than they did. Being able to sit and listen to their problems and kind of be their sidekick to laying out, prioritizing initiatives from a strategic perspective, being able to kind of create a roadmap for security in those companies. That would probably be my advice. Delegate and delegate more. All of the technical aspects, all of the execution aspects to trusted people within your company. If someone's responsible for delivery, give them 100% responsibility for delivery. Your job as a CEO is to sell and to kind of, create a roadmap for your company to expand, identifying new areas where you want to go into. Whether, moving from GRC into trusted advisory, moving towards a specific area of expertise, or expanding and saying, we're a sounding board for risk management or for creating security strategies. These are completely different directions, but you need a strong leader as a CEO. You need to be a strong leader as a CEO to be able to say, all right, this is what we're going to do next. Delivery will continue. Now we're building an additional function in the company. So that's what I would do in your shoes.
Okay, thank you so much. That's invaluable. Yeah, really. So let's talk a bit about vendor relationships here. And I know it's one of your favorite topics.
Yes.
What's the most? I'm not sure if you'll have one single answer. What's the most annoying sales pitch you've encountered?
Yeah, there's no one single answer. There's a few phenomenon that really annoy me. It's from the unsolicited emails to unsolicited calls. I mean, calling me up on my cell phone is probably the most intrusive thing you can do if you don't know me or you have zero relationship with me and trying to sell me on something on the phone.
Well, they can appear on your doorstep. That's even more intrusive.
I've had that once. And I was fortunately not, they appeared at the doorstep of my corporate office, and we're like, yeah, I'll wait. It's all right. I was like, all right, you talk to the secretary. Once I'm free, I'm sure they'll let you up. And I was not even in the same state. So hopefully they'll learn their lesson. But yeah, those unsolicited pitches and kind of in-your-face marketing and the warmongering and the fear, uncertainty, and doubt of you must be dealing with this insane risk, and work from home now poses a huge spike in security incidents. Like, come on, it's FUD marketing. I would classify it into like this one big category of just horrible marketing and sales pitches. So yeah, I don't have a single example. I love those emails like, this is my third and last email. I was like, do you promise? Because I've seen this before. There's a follow-up email to that saying, this is your last opportunity to get 15. I was like, no, I thought that last email was the last email. I hate those. They clog my email. I am sort of that OCD person that does read almost every email that I see. I'm fortunate enough to be able to kind of skim through them and identify them as spam, which they are. But I do remember them, and I do remember the ones that are repeat offenders, and I will get those on a blacklist at some point, because I think that's just bad management and bad guidance to those salespeople. I don't have anything personal against the actual people who are doing it. I have something against the companies that employ them and guide them to do those kind of sales tactics.
I just had a thought. Maybe what we should do is to form a group of CISOs that will only discuss marketing, like how to market, how to build good marketing. I'm pretty confident you would be able to, to shift your perspective and to maybe change even positions and maybe earn much more money if you're able to crack that. But yeah, just a thought.
Maybe, maybe. Hopefully we're doing something like that at SVCI, having
Yeah.
50 plus CISOs working with different startups. Hopefully we do have, I actually do think that we have an impact on how they position themselves, how they market, how they sell, and us being there providing that guidance hopefully makes a change.
Yeah, but that's limited to only to the startups that you invest in, right?
Yep, of
Obviously.
course.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So what it is that you are looking for in a vendor?
I'm looking, and again, I alluded to that before, someone who knows a problem domain, all right, and knows how to talk about a problem domain and really identify the areas in that domain that they can solve or that they can address. Having the humility to understand that they will almost never be able to solve the entire domain, having the ability to identify what specific areas that they can address and to what level they can address. Working with those vendors is truly a pleasure from my perspective, because it gives me an opportunity to challenge them and say, this is great. All right, first of all, kudos for identifying this correctly. Second of all, let's work on the challenge. Let's work, let's implement this, try to see if you can actually address the issues that you say that you're addressing. And then based on that, let's see together if we can create a roadmap for the both of us for addressing additional elements of that problem domain, or calibrating again once the product is implemented and the solution is in place, and now measuring, all right, what else do I need to address? And does that fit into your product roadmap? I think that these are the vendors that I love working with the most, having a true partnership. And I truly see each one of my vendors as a partner for this, both for myself as someone who can help me solve my problems, as well as for them in terms of being able to create a roadmap that actually addresses real world problems and turn those back into products and solutions that I can keep marketing outside of, Ian and Cimpress.
Okay. So what would be the best advice you could give a vendor that, feels he has a solution that might fit to you, and and still not connect with you in an intrusive manner? So because you did mention the network, but
Yeah.
I'm sure there are many vendors out there, and maybe you do have a need for, just to talk with some of them. So how can they connect with you?
I would say two ways. One is do your homework, and because I'm pretty open in terms of what I'm working on and kind of what my challenges are. It's fairly easy to do proper OSINT, so to speak, on the businesses that we run and on Cimpress in general, and to identify what is our operating environment, what challenges we're probably facing, and come up with a very succinct pitch, with a very succinct kind of approach of, hey, this might be of interest to you because I understand that this is your operating environment. The second way is to identify my existing relationships with vendors, with suppliers, with VARs and consultants, and work through them. There's a reason why I have a network of trusted advisors and trusted vendors that I am working with, because they're helping me vet a lot of those solutions. Why should I work so hard when I can have a good relationship with a local VAR that can do that work for me, that have this trust relationship with myself, that does understand, my roadmap and my strategy, and knows to propose and kind of bring up different solutions for my review based on that understanding. So again, it's not a huge secret. With a little bit of work, they can understand who I'm working with. And sometimes I will actually point them to my trusted advisors and say, you know what, work with them, try it out. They will guide you through the process. They will maybe test it on a couple of other customers, maybe smaller ones, maybe ones that have this problem in a much prominent position.
Mm-hmm.
Run there, and then they'll bring you to me after vetting you and making sure that you're actually doing what you're claiming to. Perfect. Sorry.
So yeah, so you shared some meaningful ways in which vendors can connect with you. I'm sure this might help some of our listeners. Is there any way our listeners can actually connect with you? And I know you have a blog, you have a website. Maybe you want to share about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a blog on iamit.org/blog. That's my website. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. I do have an Instagram account, but my daughter tells me it's boring and I'm not posting enough. These are kind of the typical ways. Again, be respectful. Don't send me FUD. I do try to engage with people. Don't try to just willy-nilly connect to me on LinkedIn. I try to keep that a professional network for people who I've actually interacted with and kind of, I typically say met in person, but in COVID days, if we Zoom together, that's okay as well.
That's the equivalent of meeting in person.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think we almost met in person just like a week before the COVID hit in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, in San Francisco. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, someday soon.
Soon.
Yeah. I don't think they'll be having RSA in person this year, right? They have it virtually.
I don't think so. As someone who's been involved with B-Sides for a long time now, we canceled our B-Sides Vegas earlier this year, and we didn't go for a virtual event either. We don't think that's appropriate for
it's not
B-Sides.
And it's not the same. I think I've attended a few of those virtual conferences. It's just not. It's not the same. And I think what you said before, meeting a colleague, a customer, a friend over a beer, a burger, anything like in-person meeting, you can't really take that away. You can't really equate anything to that. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So we're coming up and we're very close to wrapping this podcast. Let me just ask you a few quick questions here.
Sure.
What's the single most important thing to you in your career?
To keep enjoying it. Really to be able to wake up in the morning and be excited about the day, about the week, about what's ahead of me. If I lose that, and I've lost it a few times in my past, that's typically a sign for me that I should be making a change. If I'm bored, if I find this kind of a mundane thing, just kind of rolling with the punches, it's not for me. So yeah, the keeping that passion, keeping that interest, the challenge, for me is the number one thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a quote, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, right? And I think you live by it.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It makes it very challenging. I mean, I've changed jobs a few times in the past after a fairly short amount of time because I've lost that drive. I lost the passion. And, a lot of people were telling me, well, you finally reached the point where you can kind of step back and just, sit back and relax and get paid. And, things are running. You don't have to work really hard. I'm like, exactly. It's like, I've lost it. What's the interest in that? So to a degree, I know it hurts me, and that there's a lot of people who are sitting in those positions who have put in this 1, 2, 3 years of, building and kind of creating something that runs by itself, and they allow themselves to sit back and relax and kind of enjoy the fruits of their labor. But for me, that's
it's boring.
It's boring. Yeah, I'll do that, and I'll be like, all right, what's the next challenge? And if I can't find it in this position, then yes, I will look I'll start looking for other positions. I think that, that's what's been driving me in my last few positions. And I've been, fortunate enough to land those positions that allowed me to keep pursuing, to keep challenging, to keep expanding, including my existing one. I mean, when I started this position, I didn't know what an ERM was, what enterprise risk management was. And I ended up, getting into that group and making changes and implementing new things and learning and teaching and, other things that I'm doing these days that are completely outside of what the initial job description even entitled. And even changing the job description as I was getting hired because, I got the proposal. I was like, well, actually, this is cool. I love this, but if the job description would be this, I would absolutely take it. And, they came back to me and was like, you know what, let's do it. Let's do this, what you proposed. So having that, flexibility and having that kind of really partnership in the way that you work at and having the rest of the executive management get it and work with you is truly the way to go from my perspective.
Okay, coming up to one of my favorite questions here. If you had unlimited funds, what would you do with your life?
So many things. Surprisingly, it's not, building this dream home or something like that. It would be to be able to keep this hobby of learning new things and picking up, new challenges. It wouldn't be buying the most expensive car I can think of. I'm driving a Prius. I can probably afford something a little fancier, but that works for me. I'm not racing. I love racing, and I will take an exotic car in Vegas any day of the week, but not as my daily driver. I would allow myself to do things that I always wanted to do. I learn how to pilot a plane and sail a boat and take up other interesting hobbies. Get back into scuba diving and racing motorcycles and keep doing the things that keep me alive. Or
that makes you tick. Yeah.
that makes you feel alive.
Yeah. And definitely, some of the things that you mentioned are on my list as well. Specifically, piloting a plane. I actually looked into that before COVID hit.
Yep.
Because I live in California now, so you have a lot of options here.
Yeah,
but maybe someday.
COVID drove me to start doing that. I'm more than halfway through my theory tests, and I'm well into my first 10 hours of
nice. Impressive.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, so just to wrap this up, do you have anything that you especially love, while reading, listening to, watching, anything that inspired you? It could be recently, could be not recently.
I try to keep myself appraised of what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the world, and just fantasy and other reading or mostly listening materials these days with Audible during my runs in the morning and commute and whatnot. A couple of things that really stuck were there was a great audiobook about from an ex SEAL. Oh wow, I can't remember. I can't believe I'm really bad with names. But it's basically kind of his life story of starting off from a semi-broken home and really believing in himself and getting himself through life, finding his way into the U.S. military, getting into that program, into the Navy SEAL program. Keep challenging himself and taking on new challenges. He's one of the most prominent, amazing athletes in the world. That book really struck me and left its mark. Highly recommended. I'm going to get to it in a second, so I'll actually be able to share.
Logging into your cloud reader.
Yeah, exactly. I'm logging into my Audible and
same thing.
Embarrassingly enough, I don't remember the name, but here it comes. Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. highly recommended. I'm sure the book itself is amazing, but the format of that audiobook is somewhere between a traditional audiobook when someone kind of reads the book and a podcast, because the narrator then interviews the author and they talk about each and every chapter. So
really?
you kind of get, yeah, it's an amazing experience. I think it's a really innovative format, and it was really fun to listen to. And getting that kind of, straight up, no bullshit commentary about the written text from the author, really unabridged, really, no filters, I think is highly valuable. And the content itself is fascinating, between the stories and kind of the personal struggle and the life kind of story around it. Truly inspirational. So that was fascinating. Another kind of aspect of it that I've found really interesting. Again, it's called Extreme Ownership. Again, really great book. It gave me a lot of confirmation on a lot of my a lot of my past experiences from a leadership and just management perspective. And for me, it was like, oh, this makes sense now. And they kind of put that in a good formulation of, this is what leadership really looks like, or at least, the way it spoke to me in terms of leadership style and leading by example and working with your directs, and really understanding how to drive people and how to drive yourself and manage yourself as in that, when you're put in that position. Again, really resonated. I don't know if it's a coincidence that they're both coming in from kind of a military perspective. I'm not a big fan of trying to apply military leadership concepts into business.
Yeah.
So again, when you're hearing that, take that with a huge grain of salt. And my advice would be to listen to those or read those, and be able to filter and read and pick, really be free to pick and choose the things that you deem relevant to your personal experience and to your personal environment. It's not always a one-to-one translation, and I hate people that think that because all of us came from some military training and some military experience. A lot of people that I ran, or at least some people that I ran into in my career, mostly in the US, typically like to tag you, oh, so you're ex-military, so you must be XYZ. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
But again, pick and choose. There's a lot of great material there that I think that either you'll be able to confirm some of the approaches that you're taking, or calibrate some of your leadership and kind of management approaches, and be able to utilize that in your day-to-day life.
And the name of that second book was Extreme Ownership?
Extreme Ownership, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're at I think this is almost the end of the podcast. So I just wanted to thank you again. I do appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy your schedule must look like, and I do realize that you're now traveling as well. So it's really appreciated.
Absolutely.
And on a personal note, I really hope that we'll be able to meet in person, maybe sometime soon.
Soon,
maybe
please.
We can take either the Chinese or the Russian vaccine in the meantime. I suggested that, but my wife doesn't really like that idea too much.
Sputnik, I'll sign up.
Sputnik 5, 6, 4. Well, yeah, one of those. But yeah, thank you so much for joining. And
Absolutely, pleasure.
Yeah, hoping to see you soon.
Definitely. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us for another episode of CISOs Insiders. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more professional content, please check us out on social media.